let's get into Blame It On Rio. Blame It On Rio is a 1984 American romantic comedy film directed by Stanley Donen and written by Charlie Peters and Larry Gelbart, based on the 1977 French film Un Moment d'Engagement, starring an ensemble cast including Michael Caine. Because when I think of, and I know Mik is right here with me on this, because when I think of sexy man that could totally draw a 17-year-old girl, you fucking think Michael Caine. Yeah, Alfred.
It's the Cockney accent. It is, mate. It's just, Michael. And actually, the whole reason that she went to him is that she didn't realize his name was Michael Caine. She thought it was Michael Caine. So she thought he was getting drugs out of it. So,
yeah. When they say there with this, like, something Franca, go ahead, Mik.
You think I'm the most impressionable.
Michael Caine, Joseph Bologna, who this is going to not be his only appearance on this podcast, Michelle Johnson, Valerie Harper, Demi Moore, also making another appearance later in the show, and José Lewgoy. The premise is basically Michael Caine and his family go on 2 separate vacations, much to Michael Caine's surprise. The wife is like, I'm going to Bahia, I think she says, and you're going to go to Rio with your best friend and his daughter and our daughter. And the reason why, at the time, she tells him, I'm not happy, I'm not satisfied in this marriage, and I need time to think. I need to get away from you and kind of figure out if I want to be in this marriage anymore. And Michael Caine, and I don't want to get off on a tangent here just yet, but Michael Caine's like, well, I work, I support my family, I'm a good, loyal husband, and I've never stepped outside my marriage. I can see why you're questioning things. Anywho,
because I'm obviously a monster.
Yeah, I'm the worst. So off to Rio they go, and Joseph Bologna's daughter's a little crazy. She gets there and she's just full of vim and vigor and she's in excitement, and she's like I said, she's a little eccentric. And one crazy night after Joe Bologna's tasting some Rio tail, she corners Michael Caine alone on a beach and she throws herself at him all naked and shit. And he, being a man in a loveless marriage, and that I mentioned he was a man, okay then, and they end up having sex on the beach. And he's thinking, well, that was a one-time thing, and let's not do this again. And she's just like, marry me. I want to be the new Mrs. Michael Caine. And he's like, oh, lordy. And
I know Chris Nolan's in your future, and he'll become Alfred. The money will flow.
So the next series of events is her continuing to openly flirt with him, and him trying to hide the fact this happened at all because, oh my God, I slept with my best friend's girlfriend. His daughter finds out and secretly seethes about it. This then goes, the next bit of this is because Michael Caine's rejected her time and time again and be like, we can't do this. You're 17. I'm 100. Knock it off.
Yeah.
No, he's 100 now. He's 42 at the time.
So now she's upset, but she can't say why she's upset. So she's like, a boy broke my heart, Daddy. And so Joe Bologna, being a good, sound father and a sane mind, I'm going to kill this boy. So now this becomes a really stupid comedy where him and Michael Caine go searching around Rio for this mystery boy who hurt the girl's feelings. It all kind of comes to a head where the Michael Caine's wife comes to Rio. He finally has to admit to Joe Bologna that he's the one that slept with the daughter, which in turn ends up unearthing the fact that one of the reasons why the marriage was in the state that it was in was actually Joe Bologna and Michael Caine's wife were having an affair. So at the end of Blame It On Rio, Jennifer attempts suicide. She ends up being saved, but then she starts dating, I think, one of the nurse boys that was taking care of her, and she stays in Rio. Demi Moore stays in Rio a little bit longer. Joe Bologna and Michael Caine's friendship is a tatters, and Michael Caine and the wife go back to, I think, Bahia together, and they're not quite back together again, but she's like, we'll talk, let's work on things. I think after this experience has shown us maybe there's something worth salvaging here, but we're not quite there yet. And that's where the movie ends. I will share some of my thoughts and then kind of pepper in thoughts as we start to talk about this. Let me say this. As an elementary school boy, watching this really hot girl throw herself at Michael Caine was pretty cool. And that was really all I ever took away from the movie. I don't think I paid I think that second half of the movie, I didn't even remember as a kid. Like the best shit is her half naked on the beach going, down on her knees going, make love to me. And like, oh, hot damn.
Please.
Yeah. All
Daddy
right.
would like to watch this alone if you don't mind.
Everyone leave the room. Watching it now as an almost 50-year-old and studying it for film craft.
Well, also let's add again. I know this may not be part of your review, but also as a father yourself.
Yeah, well,
that changes the game.
Yeah,
and sorry, Sean, not to cut you out too, but you as a stepfather changes the game with the story as well.
Yeah, it's gross. There are boundaries. There are boundaries being crossed all over the place. Let me throw this out there. I actually was doing some thinking about like how different was this from the French film, because it played into what I thought about this movie. I'm going to share this with you guys. In the Blame It On Rio, the remake of Un Moment d'Arrangement, both films share the central plot of two friends vacationing with their daughters where one of the men becomes romantically involved with the other's daughter. While the French film has a more subdued, and this is important, the French film has a more subdued, character-driven tone, focusing on moral dilemmas and the emotional weight of the affair. Blame It On Rio leans into the lighter comedic approach. The French version treats the subject matter with more nuance and drama, while the American remake prioritizes humor and escapism, softening the ethical implications. Yeah, that was kind of my big takeaway from this, and I'll throw it over to you, Dorian, to start us off. Was the problem is it's the best friend's daughter, not that she's 17, and she's younger in the French version, by the way. Yes. The problem is
France.
Yeah, the problem is more the fact that she's Joe Bologna's daughter, not the fact that she's a 17-year-old girl. I mean, there's some discussion of the age discrepancy between them, and she's like, who cares? Which, look, there are tons of May December relationships. There's tons of age gap relationships out there that work just fine. That's not really the issue. The film, once like there were two elements of the film. There's her who basically she just keeps fucking with Michael Caine through like half the movie. Like she's spelling like, I love you in the sugar, and she's like touching his leg, and she keeps doing stuff, and he's like I'm trying to keep this quiet, and you're like wanting to do a parade of elephants. Like, knock it off, you crazy person.
For the benefits of Mr. Kite,
I could do an hour on just her behavior alone, but I film discussion, not therapy session. So but once you get past that, then the film is just a slapstick, stupid comedy, which I think worked very well for the 80s, but it also like ages the film a lot to where like I've watched enough stupid comedies of the 80s to know, oh my God, boy, was this made for an American audience. And that's all it is. It's just, it's Three's Company, the movie. If anyone knows that reference to that television show, it is a lot of like, them trying to like hide this secret. And a lot of the laughs, a lot of the comedy just comes from Joe Bologna doesn't know that his girlfriend just banged his daughter, and they're trying to hide it, and that's literally all the jokes over and over and over again. So upon viewing as a more sober film critic-y adult, I don't know if I liked it as much as I did back when I was a kid, but I do think it makes for interesting discussion. Your thoughts, your initial thoughts, Dorian?
I think this is a movie that I wouldn't say everyone needs to watch. I think it's a fun one. Like, again, if it's on TV and you're not watching something else, this is a interesting movie to go through. There's a trend in the 80s, and again, I realize I'm preaching directly to the choir when I say this. There was a trend in the 80s that we then would do slightly differently, but also in the same way in the early 2000s of remaking foreign films. Like in the 2000s, it was Japanese horror films being remade in the American way. In the 80s, it was, French or any European film that had gotten any bit of business.
Yes, Eddie.
Well, no, that's exactly where I was going. It's like, Eddie Izzard's thing is that if the film did any bit of business in America, they'd remake it and up the
Room
budget.
with a view of hell.
No, Staircase of Satan, Pond of Death. But this is actually a really good movie in the sense that they use the comedy well, but they also use the drama well, in my opinion. Actually, about a month and a half before you brought this to me, I have godchildren, like not children of my own, but obviously godchildren. And I'm 26. My oldest goddaughter is 16.
Mm-hmm.
And she came to me and well, she called me. It was like middle of the fucking night. It was like 3 a.m. And again, when your goddaughter calls you at 3 a.m., I was like, this can't be good.
Sure.
Who died? What happened? She's like, and she's laughing her ass off as I answer the phone. I'm like, okay, well, like if you're laughing your ass off, either you're in that much shock of whatever injury you've gone through, or this is actually funny. And she's like, okay, you remember when you were at my party the other night? I was like, yeah. She had a birthday. She's like, okay, you remember my friend Carrie? I was like, yeah. Who is her friend Carrie is like 18. She goes, well, so obviously we had a whole slumber party for my birthday after that. And she would not shut up about how hot you were. And again, there's the initial moment of like, okay, I'm complimented, I'm flattered, but you are 17 and that's gross. And
I
also
am
you're like
16 going on 17.
17.
Theater.
Fellas will fall in line. It's like I was really complimented, but I was like immediately grossed out because I'm like, you're my but and again, then when you brought this with that happening, you bringing this movie up, I was like, oh crap. And again, obviously, I'm not as old as Michael Caine was in this movie, but it still was like that same issue. And then again, rewatching this for this podcast, I was like, wow, okay. But anyways, I enjoy this movie because it's fun in the kind of everything goes wrong way.
Yeah, again, it has that Three's Company element to it.
Yeah, exactly. Three's Company, the movie.
The humor is in the misunderstanding.
It's like, again, this movie brings up. I did actually watch the French version as well, and I believe the French version also falls under the what we call on the WTM network the Shea Doctrine. It was beautiful, it was important, and I hated it. Okay. Because again, that's how that movie works. So I'm sorry, I've been talking for way too long. I really enjoy this movie. It's not one of those ones that I want to watch all the time, but it's one of those, if it's on TV or it comes on streaming, it's one of those I've seen Blame It in Rio for a long time. I'll check this out again.
I would never have cheated on Melissa, and I will never break the rules of my current relationship with Jen, because these are moral issues, and I am a moral person. However, if I were lacking a moral compass, and I thought, okay, well, I have no moral compass, and I'm going to do what feels good in the moment, I still wouldn't cheat. For everything that oh God, what's her name in this movie? For everything that Jennifer does in this movie to poor Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Seriously, like the whole thing about like you're cheating on your partner, and you're like, all right, well, the life's blood of this thing is your ability to keep a secret. And she's just like, I want to be the new Mrs. Michael Caine, and and I want to tell the world. It's like, shut up, you rude. Like, God sake, be quiet.
If you are in that position, even if you are in really great shape and you mostly feel good about yourself, this 17-year-old hottie comes up and is like, again, what you were talking about, gets down and love to me. It's that, oh my God,
it does help your ego. The little bit that I did date in the last 2 years, And if anyone under the age of 30 actually found me attractive and wanted to date me, that's a huge boost to my ego. Sean, your thoughts, and then Michaela, your thoughts on. I know you said you didn't have a whole lot of thoughts on the craft of the movie, so thematically, in 100 to 500 words, what you want to talk about with this movie, Sean?
Thing that I kind of get here is I've been kind of struggling with how to kind of put this as Dorian was talking. I think I kind of got lost in my thoughts. Is the notion that one of the phrases I love to trot out sometimes is a man is whatever room he is in at the time. And I think that when you're talking about sexual taboos in particular, that's kind of, from my opinion anyway, one of the exciting things about it. Is just not the very base notion of I'm not supposed to have this, I shouldn't be doing this, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
It's the notion of by walking through this door and risking what I'm risking, what am I bound to find out about myself?
Let me interject
that
here,
might
on your point. That's a big part of Act 1 of this movie is her issue, the wife's issue with Michael Caine, which puts this all in motion, is she's like, he's like, she's crying in the bed, and he says to her, "What did I do?" And she's like, "Nothing. You would have to do something for you to have done something wrong," or something along those lines.
Yeah.
She's remarking that, I kind of made a snide remark about like, oh, you take care of your wife and your kids, and you go to your job and you do everything you're supposed to do. What a monster you are. In the woman's defense, and I brought this up on a previous podcast, and and with people in my personal life, if you're not bringing a degree of romantic energy to the relationship, there is the off chance your partner is going to be bored and listless, restless, unsatisfied, and unfulfilled in the relationship. It's not just about providing an adequate nest. You actually have to put work and energy into the relationship, and when it's not there, the other partner struggles. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the easy trap to fall into. Is you do get so wrapped up, or at least you can get so wrapped up in focusing very strictly on being the consummate, tireless, dependable provider that you kind of neglect even the idea that there's any other role that might need to be fulfilled.
Right.
And that's the thing, is when you're on either side of that and you step through that door, yes, you're taking a big chance, both on what might be the material cost to your lifestyle and kind of and kind of the dark places it might drag you to personally. But at the same time, you're also kind of sometimes willing to chance that because you just sense innately that there's some untapped part of yourself that you could have a chance to glimpse and know yourself better for having shaken hands with.
Really quick, throw this out there.
Yeah,
if she's 18, it doesn't change that much of the movie, because here's the thing: it's still the friend's daughter, still probably not a great boundary to have crossed. But also, he's not sleeping with a person when she throws herself at him on the beach. And Michaela, I am going to get you into the conversation. I swear to God, I needed to address this point, and I'm going to throw it right to you. He's not really sleeping with her as a person. In fact, in many ways, she's very much objectified, but not purposely so. She put herself in that position, but also he, after having been told by his wife he lacks passion, he's too buttoned up. He's like, well, I'm just going to go with this. And he's not really thinking about her as a person. He is thinking about, like, I'm dead inside. This maybe will light a fire, and I'll come back to life, and we'll see where this goes. And then he's like, I gotta forget this ever happened, and she won't let him. And suddenly she is a person. The point that I'm getting at is she is absolutely a person with mental health needs and problems. and personality issues.
Motherfucker, you need Jesus.
And wants and needs of her own, which he doesn't seem to realize until well after he's blown the stop sign, so to speak. And like suddenly she's like a real person he has to deal with. And I think the life lesson in all of that is, you let people into your life, and because like you need them for this or that, and you have to remember that they're also people, and they're going to behave or act a certain way, and you can't control that, and you either fucking adapt to it or don't do it at all. So, Mik, all us men's have been talking about this movie for what seems like 20 hours. What are your thoughts?
All right. I had to drink some water for this.
Water? I love your
It takes
New
a
York
lot
water.
of water to wash away New Orleans.
Context for the podcast. I grew up with New Yorkers, so that's why sometimes it comes through.
Right. Yeah, you, me. Long Island, baby. Long Island strong.
New York.
Right.
No, why I felt this, like, when we did the last triple feature of the Lolita and the Kubrick films.
Yeah.
I had the same kind of thought where it was just like, okay, you're trying to have this relationship with a younger person, and it's from the context of where we are now, it doesn't work as well.
Sure.
But no, anyway, I'm going to bring in my own, that's why I'm pausing so much, is because I'm going to bring in my own context to this.
Okay.
When I was like 10 years old, and the internet just started blowing up, and I could do whatever the hell I wanted on the internet. I was talking to people who were 40 years old, 50 years old. Like, I was definitely that girl who was just like pining for older men's attention. And so throughout this film, I was like, I feel you, but it's not right.
Right.
And so, like, whenever I was watching it, it was almost painful because I was just like, don't do that, please.
It's like watching a horror movie.
You're screaming back in time at somebody who's...
Yeah, I know. Well, like, before this was a problem, it was like I was screaming back in time for this. But, like, because whenever she was talking to her friend, it was like, oh, well, I have interest in an older man. And, like, the other one was like, I am too. And it was like, oh, my God, please stop, because this is not going to end well. Anyway, but, like, no. Okay, so I feel like at least people who are my age, who grew up in the factor of, like, there were kids whenever internet didn't exist, and then it did exist. Like, you started talking to people on Omegle and Kick and whatever, and you're just like, oh, well, these older men are talking to me, and they're paying more attention to me, so I'm going to, like... And, like, my interest wasn't, like, money or anything like that. It was just, like, we had some interests in line, and we're both cosplayers and whatever. And he just got divorced, so I was probably the young rebound. But, but, like, it was still, like, it reminded me of all of that. And I was just like, I don't... So with the movie, I'm going to bring back the movie in this context.
I mean, the whole thing we're here for.
The whole thing we're here for. The 17-year-olds being like, oh, well, your dad's hot. And then I'd be like, well, your dad's hot. Like, that wasn't surprising to me, but it also reminded me of Lolita that we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
Which, not in the exact extreme.
Right.
But also in the factor of, like, kids are going to look at these people who, like, treat people okay, and they might be more attractive and whatnot, and then be like, oh, well, I'm horny for this person. So, like, I don't know, that whole thing, that was fine. But the rest of the movie, like, I also found it very funny.
To conclude, I want to talk about how well this movie did or did not do, unless anyone has any other burning desires. Box office, it did about $18.6 million in 1984. That's still quite a haul. Vincent Canby, reviewing Blame It On Rio, wrote, there's not a single funny or surprising moment in the movie. However, Blame It On Rio It's not simply humorless, it also spreads gloom. It's one of those unfortunate projects that somehow suggests that everyone connected with this movie hated it and all the other people involved. And I don't think that's a fair review. About that review, I think my biggest complaint about the movie in terms of craft is that it leans so hard on the comedy because European films seem to be more thoughtful, have more depth of character, whereas, and this definitely is the case with Woman in Red, whereas when you remake that stuff for American audiences, they're like, these fucking monkeys aren't going to sit for this kind of a movie. What is it, a Schindler's List? You got to put more yucks in there. You got to have someone falling down a staircase. I mean, for God's sakes. Chevy Chase.
For God's sake, somebody throw a pie.
Yeah, that kind of. I was going to say, this is the country where they thought Chevy Chase falling out of an airplane was the height of comedy. So these shaven apes are going to sit for a thoughtful meditation on, sex and aging. You got to, as Sean said, someone throw a pie. But I don't. So that's one of my issues with the movie. But I don't, but that you can't ignore what the movie is talking about, even if it's just briefly mentioning it. There is some meditation here on relationships, sex and aging and all of that. Problem is they bring it up, they touch on it, and then it's all right, now push Joe Bologna down a flight of stairs. We got to deal with that. And it's all right, there's a very busy movie, I think, is also another thing with it. It's it's weirdly paced and busy at the same time.
We were at the no, baby, go ahead.
No, because that's why the only thing I was focusing on was the relationships, because there was funny moments, and I enjoyed that. Okay, we brought up the Shea Doctrine on this show. We came up with the Wanamaker Doctrine.
No, it's a Wanamaker Compromise.
The Wanamaker Compromise, which is, did you enjoy it? Yes. Were you entertained? Yes. Then it's an okay movie.
any piece of art that is entertaining has achieved its job and therefore is viable.
Right.
I was entertained. So the Wanamaker Compromise was.
There you go. So
do you want to make a compromise?
The Canberra Times described Blame It On Rio as, get this, the Canberra Times described Blame It On Rio as one of the worst movies ever made, and definitely the most banal piece of rubbish to have Michael Caine's name on the credits, and he has quite a few bombs to his credit. Roger Ebert gave the film one star out of possibly 4, writing, "It's really unsettling to see how casually this movie takes a serious situation."
Oh, who gives a shit about Robert Ebert?
It disturbed.
You know what? Nobody really wants to say it for fear they'll be stoned and run out of the room. But let's face it, Roger Ebert had a punch on for disappearing up his own ass.
Go ahead, sir.
Girl is using sex to play mind games with a middle-aged man, and the movie gets its yucks with slapstick scenes, which is kind of what I said. What's shocking is how many first-rate talents are associated with this lead. Oh, look, man, everyone's got to work. Chris Chase ranked the movie in his new breed of exploitation films, addressing the topic of teenage sexuality. Rotten Tomatoes has a 7% based on 27 critics. It isn't clear who is the most culpable for this creepy comedy sheer wrongness, but its smarmy laughs and uncomfortable romance will leave audiences feeling guilty long afterward. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think people get this movie. Get where it's good or forgive it where they should. I think it's getting a much harsher rap than those critics give it credit for. But that also might be just, it's the year of our Lord 2024, and people think differently now about things than they might have back in 1984. Any final words on this? If not, we'll move on to LOL.
So if they're thinking about that, the people my age who might come across this film need to remember, I'm 22. So if you were in the age that internet was just coming to BB, and then we had those apps or whatever, you need to remember what you did on Kick and Omegle.
Okay.
Because we all did it. We all did it.